The immortality of the soul is the lie of Satan as stated in the book of Genesis chapter 3 verse 3 to 5. But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God had said, You shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. And the serpent said unto the woman, You shall not surely die. For God doth know that in the day you eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. This teaching has existed from the earliest times and was founded in cultures like Sumer, Egypt, Assyria, Greece, and the like. According to Satan, disobedience does not bring death, as was revealed by God, but enlightenment to the claimed fact that in dying you do not die, but uncover your divinity, your immortality. Hell, therefore, has also been the accompanying teaching to the immortality of the soul, as the ancient people sought to establish divine justice for their gods. The nature and character of these gods have been far from righteous, being apathetic, cruel, unjust, and having a dualistic and pantheistic nature. The inclusion of the concept of an immortal soul into Christian accounts of life after death produced a composite account. The body dies and the soul of those who were to be saved travel to heaven, while the soul of the sinner descends to the fiery place of torment. At the end of history, there would be a universal resurrection, and the soul would be reunited with their bodies, although the bodies would be in a transformed and immortal state. It was Dante's writing of the Divine Comedy, and in particular its first section, the Inferno, that has taken the ancient myth of hell and its medieval theological teaching and made its heinous imagery to press on the minds of the masses in Western culture. Heavily influenced by his Catholic upbringing and the theology of the immensely influential philosopher, theologian, and Catholic priest Thomas Aquinas. The Divine Comedy stands as one of the most revered literary works of all time, its influence adding to the sea of false teachings concerning hell and linked with the state of the dead as accepted and taught by the vast number of professed Christians. In the book of Revelation, chapter 17, verse 5, Mystery Babylon the Great is believed to be none other than the Roman Catholic Church, and as such, she is said to be the mother of harlots, having daughters, those once Protestant churches who have been infiltrated by her army, the Jesuits, and bearing as proof such teachings as hell and the immortality of the soul, among others. The Protestant reformers saw in the term Babylon, or rather the whore Babylon, to refer to none other than the Roman Catholic Church. Writers like Martin Luther, in his work titled On the Babylonian Captivity of the Church, denounced the whole system of medieval Christendom as a groundless human invention imposed on the Church. Other reformers like John Calvin and John Knox, author of the first blast of the trumpet against the monstrous regiment of women, all showed this unique connection between Babylon and the papacy. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abomination of the earth. According to the Roman Catholic Church's view outlined in their catechism, it states, the teaching of the Church affirms the existence of hell and its eternity. Immediately after death, the soul of those who die in a state of mortal sin descend into hell, where they suffer the punishment of hell, eternal fire. Catechism of the Catholic Church, page 103. In addition to this is their teaching of purgatory, a place between heaven and hell, where those who had sinned but not mortally can be purged from those sins and make their way to heaven. In this, prayers can be made on behalf of them. Indulgences were paid to the church for the guaranteed deliverance from such torments, as bail may be paid for the release of one held in prison. Their catechism describes purgatory as purification so as to achieve the holiness necessary to enter the joy of heaven, which endured by those who die in God's grace and friendship but still imperfectly purified. This final purification of the elect is entirely different from the punishment of the damned. Note, this teaching implies that man has a soul that can exist apart from his body and is immortal. This is a logical necessity for the assumption of the existence of hell, but is not a teaching of the Bible. So what does the Bible say concerning the soul? The soul is identified as the dust of the ground plus the breath of life. And the Lord God formed man out of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostril the breath of life, and man became a living soul. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground. For out of it wast thou taken, for dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. His breath goeth forth, he returneth to his earth. In that very day his thoughts perish. It also teaches that a soul dies and ceases to exist. The soul that sinneth, it shall die. And death is likened to sleep, a state of unconsciousness. For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might. For there is no work, no device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave, whither thou goest. The Reformers had varying views on the teaching of the state of man after death, and hence the teaching of hell. The Westminster Confession of 1646 is a formal statement of doctrinal belief generally intended for the public declaration by an individual of the congregation of the Church of England, Scotland, Presbyterian, and those of the Calvinist tradition. In chapter 32, on the topic of the state of man after death and of the resurrection of the dead, it states, "The bodies of men after death return to the dust and see corruption, but their souls, which neither die nor sleep, having an immortal substance, immediately return to God who gave them. The souls of the righteous, being then made perfect in holiness, are received into the highest heavens, where they behold the face of God, in light and glory, waiting for the full redemption of their bodies. And the soul of the wicked are cast into hell, where they remain in torments and utter darkness, reserved to the judgment of the great day." Martin Luther, the great German Protestant reformer, in contrasting views to other reformers like John Calvin and Philip Melanchthon, maintained and believed that a Christian soul sleeps after it is separated from the body in death. He disputed popular interpretations of Bible passages such as the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. He rejected the teaching of torments for the saints. He stated, "It is enough for us to know that souls do not leave their bodies, to be threatened by the torments and punishment of hell, but enter a prepared bed chamber in which they sleep in peace." Rejecting also the Catholic teaching of purgatory, which involved Christian souls undergoing penitential suffering after death. In conclusion, almost all the Christian denominations have fallen for this lie of Satan, and as such has misrepresented the very nature and character of God. The idea of an eternally burning hell for sinners is contradictory to and defeats the purpose of God's promise and purpose to put an end to sin, when the eternity of heaven should run simultaneously with an eternal hell. One modern writer and one who followed the steps of Martin Luther as one of those great reformers, stated, "How repugnant to every emotion of love and mercy, and even to our sense of justice, is the doctrine that the wicked dead are tormented with fire and brimstone in an eternally burning hell, that for the sins of a brief earthly life they are to suffer torture as long as God shall live." The Great Controversy, page 535.